Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Do More Foundation podcast. Today, the topic is on advocacy in the community, and my special guest is Tshepo Mantje from Real Reform for ECD. So, welcome, Tshepo. Good to have you here.
Hi, Kabelo. I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you for your time. So, our topic is advocacy in the communities, but I want us to start with a nice check-in question. So, if you had the ability to go back in time and be a historical figure, who would it be and what would you do a day in their lives?
That's a good one. Oh my goodness. Oh wow, that's a good question.
So tell the viewers a bit more about your reform and what you guys do and why were you created?
Thank you. Real Reform for ECD, Real Reform for Early Childhood Development, is a movement that advocates for holistic, well-funded, quality and inclusive early childhood development services in South Africa. We were launched in 2020 in response to the new Children's Amendment Bill being introduced in South Africa. The Children's Act is the law in South Africa that states all the laws relating to children. And two parts in the Children's Act speak to early childhood development and partial care. So in 2020, the state was reviewing and creating a new bill, a new act. But the sector, the early childhood development sector, recognized that the amendments that were related to early childhood development were not adequate for where the sector is today. So instead of each organization going and making submissions individually, they decided to come together and galvanize and mobilize the ECD sector, particularly seeing an opportunity to bring in early childhood development practitioners so that they can lend their voice to advocacy work. But in this case was the Children's Amendment Bill. So in 2020, the Real Reform was formed around mobilizing to get the Children's Amendment Bill to adequately represent the needs of children. Thus, Real Reform was formed. We were able to get about 1,600 submissions to Parliament, which eventually blocked the passing of the bill, and the Department of Basic Education putting together a technical task team to review the Children's Amendment Bill and create it to a better standard. And from there, Real Reform recognized, there's an appetite for people to mobilize and advocate for early childhood development. So to build on that momentum then, we started looking at other gaps in the sector and how can we address that. So our focus is on creating an enabling legal, policy and regulatory framework that allows for the provision and expansion of ECD services.
That's amazing. 1,600 submissions. Wow. Yeah. And I know community mobilization sometimes is a bit tricky. So how have you gotten around, especially the individual agendas? Because I can imagine that different communities have got their different, context, the challenges are different. So how have you been able to bring everyone along so that you can get to the 1,600, submissions and beyond, just the parliamentary submission that you guys did?
Where I will start is that there is an appetite and a willingness to be actively involved in advocacy, particularly in early childhood development, that we found when we got to the communities. It is about really accepting and honoring those nuances within communities because that's what makes the community. And particularly with Real Reform and how we're working with communities is through a campaign we're calling Make Local Government Work for ECD. So Real Reform is running a few campaigns. The Children's Amendment Bill is one of them. The local government aspect is one of them. There's also two more, the Right to Nutrition and a standalone ECD Act. So where the campaign that finds us in the communities is this Make Local Government Work for ECD. And the aim of this campaign is to make early childhood development a local government priority so that it is represented in all planning documents like the Integrated Development Plan, which writes out where the municipality will be focusing their resources. And we find that ECD is not represented in a lot of IDPs in the country. So, and then also in the budgeting. So how we do that as Real Reform is we don't go and make submissions to local municipality IDPs. We meet with ECD Forum forums, which are collective of ECD practitioners within a community. And then we engage with them on the opportunities for them for advocacy. So the route has been through capacitating and supporting the practitioners so that they can have ownership of the advocacy strategy and then take it to local government. So how we then deal with the differences is that we allow the differences to be, because we know that in every municipality, every community, practitioners are going to bring forward what their concerns, their challenges are. And then what we do is just provide the infrastructure that allows them to engage with local governments. So we will create stuff like a submission template that can then be used by the practitioners to change, to add stuff on, and then they can use that template after having personalized it to submit it to Parliament. So at local government, the nuances, the differences are welcomed and honored because it means that we are addressing contextual issues.
I mean, I love the aspect of capacitating the community and the ECD practitioners, because we know the challenges that we have. A lot of them don't have formal qualifications, so it's amazing to see you guys just holding their hand and taking them through that process. So give us an example of the work that you've done with the Dumo Foundation, you know, in some of our communities in Pongola and Nkomazi, and how has that advocacy taken off in the communities and what has worked well?
Yes. It has been such an amazing partnership with Dumo Foundation and all our partners. Real Reform, as I said, is not an organization. We are a movement of people who are in the ECD sector. So the movement is coordinated by a steering committee of 10 to 12 people. And that steering committee identifies gaps within the sector and then creates campaigns around them. Dumo Foundation is one of the members of this steering committee that's coordinating the campaign for Real Reform for ECD. And also these partners also allow access to their communities. So Dumo has a community of ECD practitioners all over the country who they have made available to Real Reform to support advocacy within these communities. Currently, Real Reform is supporting Dumo communities in Pongola, in KZN, in Nkomazi, which is in Mpumalanga, and also in Worcester, which is in the Western Cape. And this is where the local government work has been, there's been a lot of movement. So going one by one, there's been so much, and this podcast could go on for so long. But we started in Worcester when we started engaging with Dumo Foundation. And where we start with our local government advocacy is always in reviewing the local government legal policy infrastructure around early childhood development. So we started in Worcester analyzing the IDP, what was in the IDP. And although Worcester had already had some representation of ECD, they weren't quite specific as they are now. So one of the big wins that we had from last year into this year is that the Breeda Valley Local Municipality IDP is one of the most comprehensive IDPs on ECD. Yes, there's still more work to be done. But in that IDP, they say ward for ward what they're going to do for ECD in each ward. They say targets. So they'll say by June 2023, we want to be doing this for ECD. And that's all because practitioners in Breeda Valley made submissions to Parliament, to their local municipality about what they wanted to see in the IDP. So now that we're here in Worcester, Breeda Valley Local Municipality, where the IDP has been quite comprehensive on ECD, our next step is to support the development of a local government ECD policy. And that's where we are now in Worcester. I actually just came back from Worcester yesterday, where we were workshopping with ECD practitioners on the process we're getting into in 2014 around developing a local government ECD policy, which will then support the expansion provision of ECD in Breeda Valley Local Municipality. But fun news is that we've also had buy-in from the Cape Winelands District Municipality, which Breeda Valley falls under. And they love the idea of the local municipality ECD policy so much, they have bought in that they will use that as a template for the other municipalities within the district to develop their own policies. So that has been because of the momentum caused by the practitioners. In Nkomazi, we are in the stage where we have built the relationships with local government officials and are engaging with the IDP coordinator there, where we're still trying to get their IDP to better represent ECD. They have put a big win in Nkomazi. They have put together an IDP plan for ECD, of which next year we want that to reflect in the actual IDP itself. And in Pongola, it has been such a great community that we have joined there too, recently joined. So we've only had one prior engagement with them, but this was an introductory engagement. And where we start there is in just relationship building with local government officials and also capacitating local communities around the IDP. A big part of the job is really making this knowledge accessible and digestible to ECD practitioners themselves.
And make it easy for them to understand really what's happening in the sector and giving them a voice that, they can change what the sector looks like. And I mean, it's exciting. And I'm happy that as a foundation, we are part of, the work that Real Reform does. And I mean, the 3 communities that you mentioned are a great example of advocacy, of partnership. And I think of drilling down into the communities and showing them that it is possible for us to work together and get the results out of it. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen in the other communities.
Another community we just joined, and I do want to mention them, is in Rustenburg. Through Dumo, we were invited into Rustenburg, and it's really in the beginning stages there. So there's also some work being done there. They've just formed a technical task team through the support of the Early Care Foundation as a secretariat there too. Dumo supporting there. It has been in the beginning stages, but another place where so much work needs to be done, and we are there supporting that work too.
I'm excited about this. So I think to wind down, what are the lessons learned in advocacy in the communities, and what have been your key takeaways? And I guess what is it that you can share with our viewers and how they can get involved in community advocacy?
Yeah. Wow, that's a loaded question, and as rightfully so, because there's a lot to it. If I could narrow it down to some of the lessons that I've learned, is advocacy is a journey, and it's you might not sit under the shade of the tree which you planted, and that's sort of the reality of advocacy.
An amazing analogy, yeah.
And we have to then plant the tree regardless. So I think that mindset is one that is helpful because it allows you to learn more and their patience, mamello, in it. And you're not going to get responses all the time. So my first piece of advice would be understanding that it's going to be a journey. And a hand-holding process, both from the community that you're working with, the grassroots, in my case, the ECD practitioners, and also with the target that you are advocating towards, which is the local municipalities in this case. So from both sides, how do I become the kind of person who's able to guide people through the content of it? How do I explain the Municipal Systems Act to Bomme Bakrichi? Who have been in the ECD context all their lives. So it's realizing that it's going to be a hand-holding process and get that support. Yeah. Another, I think, big lesson that I have learned is collaboration is everything.
Absolutely.
In advocacy, we have to collaborate, reach across the aisle in every aspect of it, particularly at community level. With ECD, what's beautiful about ECD is that it's a holistic approach, right? And that by its very nature requires multiple game players to come support the holistic nature of ECD. So lean into that. Get people in your community involved in any way whatsoever. Anyone can have a relation to early childhood development. So it's about finding how do we make collaboration possible and provide the infrastructure where collaboration is able to happen. So currently how that is manifested is that Real Reform is a space for that, where once a month all of these organizations come together. We have Smart Start, Do More, Save the Children. There is ECD forums that are represented on there. There's Equality Collective. There's Ilifa la Bantwana. These are big NGOs who are doing a lot of work in their own right, but have recognized that coming together, that voice is stronger.
Important, yeah.
And then we also do that at local government level through what we call technical task teams. And technical task teams are made up of multiple ECD stakeholders within the community. So people who are training ECD practitioners, they are represented on a technical task team. NGOs, people who are supporting through foods and food delivery and things like that. Even local municipalities. So we have people from the fire department, everyone who practitioners have to walk through in their registration. We get them together and each department brings a representative and we put them on a technical task team. And then once a month, we meet and say, what has been developments in your department? What have been developments in your department? And then where does the collaboration happen? Yeah, so in a nutshell, it's a hand-holding process. Be patient and secondly, collaborate.
Okay. So if you had the ability to go back in time and be a historical figure, who would it be and what would you do a day in their lives?
That's a good one. Oh my goodness. Oh wow, that's a good question. Can I tell you honestly how I'm feeling in my heart? And a historical figure that has always fascinated me is Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe.
Okay.
And I'm just fascinated by the life he lived. I'm fascinated by how the apartheid state engaged with him. And I'm interested in how he spent his days isolated on Robben Island. And also particularly what he knew for the Sobukwe clause to be put in place and for the government to decide to create a law for one individual person so that they do not engage with other people ever again. And even when he was released from prison, only because he was sick with TB, he was banished to a small town in Kimberley. And there he just lived out the rest of his days, still sort of imprisoned. So my heart feels very longing for the stories that he has and what he knew, because I think it's something that was obviously quite scary and big.
That is very interesting. As a young person, I would expect you to say like a celebrity or something. I guess
I can go
different.
there. Who do I want to be? I mean, Beyonce's great.
Yes, of course, but not very historical. Thank you so much, Tshepo, for joining us today. And thank you so much to the viewers. I hope you found this very helpful and do join us for our next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Playtime.